For the 10th anniversary of our high school graduation, I transformed from the student ranked at the bottom of the class into a young entrepreneur. I was determined to make Ethan Carlson, the guy who had looked down on me back then, regret everything. But then, in an instant, I heard the news. Ethan Carlson? He died a long time ago, in the deep winter of the year we graduated. To attend this high school reunion, I not only flew all the way back from the West Coast, but I also volunteered my private estate as the venue. The homeroom teacher, who used to despise me to no end, patted my shoulder and laughed. Charlotte is our class's most outstanding young entrepreneur. No one had expected that I, the student with the worst grades, would be the first to make a comeback. Female classmates who had previously ostracized me, both openly and secretly, now crowded around, wanting to touch my designer handbag, calling me Ms. Morgan, over and over again. Amidst the chorus of compliments, I kept my eyes fixed tightly on the entrance. 39 classmates had arrived. Only one person was missing. Ethan, Riverside High's perennial top scholar. The jerk who had once posted my love letter on the school bulletin board. He still hadn't come. I had set two main objectives for myself on this trip back. First, to make Ethan regret his terrible attitude toward me. Second, to find X, the person who had secretly helped me all those years ago. I had the script all planned out. Chapter 1, the return. Chapter 2, the revenge. Chapter 3, the repayment. I hadn't expected the protagonist of my revenge plot to be a no-show right from the start. A female classmate beside me nudged my arm. Ms. Morgan, what are you staring at the door for? Everyone from our class is already here. Ethan's name was on the tip of my tongue, but I pressed my lips together and turned my head away. The homeroom teacher struggled to carry something out from behind him. It was a large time capsule, filled with the iron boxes we had sealed and deposited together before high school graduation. Buried in the earth for 10 years, the day had finally come for them to be returned to their owners. The class monitor, slicking his hair back with the same sycophantic air as always, helped the teacher distribute the stacked boxes. Back then, he used to hand me my homework last. This time, he handed me the box labeled Charlotte first. I stared at the childish stickers on the surface of the box, which already showed traces of yellowing. Holding my breath, I opened it. As expected, there was nothing inside but a simple slip of paper. To Lily in 10 years, to 27-year-old Lily. You must make Ethan Carlson regret this. The handwriting was heavy and forceful. You could see the gnashing of teeth directed at him. I looked around. My old classmates were all tearfully examining the things they had left for their future selves. Only one iron box sat lonely and unclaimed on the table. The name taped to it was Ethan Carlson, written in a lazy scrawl. He still wasn't here. He actually wasn't coming. Heaven knows how long I had waited for the qualification to say, "Don't look down on a poor youth." I let out a breath and flipped over the note in my hand. There was another sentence written on the back. Lily, you have to find the unknown X and thank him for always helping you silently. The bitterness of my youth surged up. My high school years had been miserable. To save money for tuition and fees, I often skipped breakfast and dinner. There was someone, an X, who refused to reveal his name, who would frequently leave strawberry milk and sandwiches in my locker. When street thugs targeted me, he was the one who secretly settled it. The love letter Ethan had posted on the bulletin board was the one I had written to X. X had helped me with so many things. I imagined he must be an introverted, gentle, and inconspicuous person. He had hidden his identity so well that, even by graduation, I didn't know who he was. But he had to be my classmate, otherwise, he wouldn't have known my predicaments so accurately every time. And now, except for Ethan, every other classmate was gathered here. I clenched my palms, stood up, and looked seriously at everyone. In high school, there was someone signed X, who was always silently helping me. Can I know who you are now? The students' eyes focused on my face with blank expressions, looking as if they were trying hard to recall. It was impossible to tell who he was. Or perhaps X had long since forgotten his own acts of kindness. Not only did X do good deeds without leaving a name in high school, but he also had no intention of stepping forward now. I raised my voice. X, are you there? No one answered. Someone stood up and accidentally bumped into the table. The iron box belonging to Ethan suddenly crashed to the floor. Its contents spilled out, and I instinctively looked over. Scattered on the ground were handwritten notes, a hand-woven bracelet, and a plastic lily branch. They looked familiar. These were all the cheap but sincere return gifts I had given to X. I stood there, stunned for several seconds. How could Ethan be like this? Stealing the gifts I gave to X. I walked over slowly and half-crouched on the ground. I put the overturned items back into the box with Ethan's name on it. The return gifts I had given X over 3 years were all there, not a single one missing. Inside, there were also many familiar odds and ends, along with an old flip phone. I was furious. Not only did Ethan post the love letter I wrote to X, but he also did things like this. I was ready to settle the score with him right now. It was perfect. I could get my revenge. I asked, "Where is Ethan Carlson right now?" The air suddenly fell into silence. Heavy snow fell against the floor-to-ceiling glass. It took a long time before someone finally answered. "Ethan? He died early. In the deep winter of the year we graduated." The reunion ended on an unhappy note. Outside the manor, snow was falling. I stood under a street lamp, the drifting flakes illuminated by the light, when my phone suddenly dinged. "Lily, happy 27th birthday. X." Only then did I realize it was past midnight. Today was my birthday. For so many years, I had received a birthday greeting email on time every year, always signed by X. I had originally thought I would find X before my 27th birthday, but unexpectedly, he still wasn't willing to show his face. I suddenly looked down, gazing quietly at the time capsule belonging to Ethan in my arms. A bizarre thought suddenly popped into my mind. Could Ethan be X? I opened his box. In the furthest corner lay that old flip phone. I long pressed the power button, and to my surprise, it still had a charge. There was no information on the phone, only an email center. The cloud-out box had nearly 100 emails stored, waiting to be sent. They were all uploaded 10 years ago, with the cloud delivery time already set for December 21st of each year. Some had already been sent. The format was quite uniform. Lily, happy 18th birthday. X. Lily, happy 19th birthday. X. All the way to Lily, happy 100th birthday. X. Lily, even at 100 years old, you must have a happy birthday. In truth, after graduating high school, my life gradually got on the right track. Now, people called me Ms. Morgan, and my future was bright. My friends had long ago thrown me a grand birthday party in advance, and messages from business partners hadn't stopped coming. But none of them seemed to make me want to cry as much as this simple Lily. Everyone else knew me as Charlotte Morgan, calling me Ms. Morgan or Miss Charlotte. Only X had accidentally found out during senior year that I actually didn't like using the surname Morgan. Lily was my mother's name, and also my middle name. I liked calling myself Lily. Slapping Ethan in the face. Finding X. Those were my goals for returning to the country. In the end, neither was achieved. There were many things in the time capsule. Carefully folded handwritten notes, entangled earbud cords, a hand-woven bracelet, the flip phone, and a plastic lily branch. I picked up the lily branch. It was just as cheap and inferior as I remembered, and attached to it was a wish note that had long since yellowed. I tilted my head back, feeling as if all the snow in the sky was falling onto me. The strong wind blew my hair up, and I closed my eyes to make a wish. I made my first wish as a 27-year-old. If birthday wishes can really come true, then I hope to travel through time and see you one more time, my unknown X. I had been in a daze from the moment I opened my eyes. Students moving props walked back and forth on the stage, wearing school uniforms. A snowfall had unexpectedly brought me back to high school. Old memories were dredged up. This was the drama performance from 10th grade. Our class was putting on Snow White, and we were currently in rehearsal. I lifted my head and, sure enough, saw a head full of decorations. I was playing a crudely made, extremely plastic-looking Lily, crouching quietly at the very back. If that was the case, and if I remembered correctly, the person playing Snow White right now is Ethan. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. In my memory, Ethan had always been a teenager. I lifted my eyes, looking past the students moving on stage, through the floating dust illuminated by the light, and looked straight at him at the front. He broke through the shackles of time, radiating youth. Ethan was leaning lazily against a prop stand, his school uniform washed to a pale white, his profile glowing in the light. In his hand, he held an apple so red it looked black, the prop supposedly prepared to poison Snow White. I stood up, struggling through the crowd, the decorations on my head swaying wildly. Finally, I stopped behind him. Hearing the sound, Ethan turned his head. Single eyelids, a mole under his eye, bathed in golden light. I had originally wanted to ask him if he was X, but I don't know which wire in my brain crossed, and I shouted, "Ethan Carlson, do you have a crush on me?" He took a crisp bite of the apple in his hand, his movement freezing instantly. He was silent for several seconds, then looked at me expressionlessly and said, "Who are you?" I bit the bullet and answered, "Charlotte Morgan." He straightened up, looking thoughtful. "Lily, the one who got a 38 in math." I repeatedly told myself that one should respect the dead. I endured and endured, barely stopping myself from punching him. Now I was certain. Ethan could not be my ex. There must be a mistake somewhere. Maybe this lazy jerk accidentally took the wrong box when he was putting the time capsule away. X. Introverted, gentle, inconspicuous. Ethan. Arrogant, punchable, distant. These two people had absolutely no connection. Ethan and I were two extremes. I had bought my way into Riverside High. Ethan was also bought, but it was the school paying. Riverside High had to use a high scholarship to keep him. I had only accepted my father's charity twice in my life. Once when my dad paid my tuition for Riverside High, where I met Ethan. And once when my dad applied to college for me, and I never saw Ethan again. My relationship with Ethan was the type where if I reached for food, he'd spin the table. If I wanted water, he'd slam on the brakes. In 10th grade, I stole his role in the play. In 12th grade, he posted my love letter. An eye for an eye. It only came to an end when I graduated. If he hadn't died, it probably would have continued for a long time. 10th grade Ethan was the best-looking person in the class. In the drama performance, he was forcibly assigned the role of Snow White. I was a background lily that Snow White passed by. At the time, I was very dissatisfied with my background role, so the helpful ex helped me fulfill my dream of being a protagonist. Considering he ended up worse off than me later, I decided not to steal Ethan's Snow White role this time. I was standing by the wish wall at the back of the classroom, wearing my school uniform. The wall full of sticky notes fluttered in the breeze. I saw my wish note. It didn't have a mark or a signature yet. Other students had posted things like hoping someone could solve a specific function. Only mine was a bald sentence. I want to be a princess. What a simple sentence. Later, this note was seen by X, who then made my wish come true. But this time, I prepared to change it. I took down the wish note, scribbled out the word princess, wrote the word knight, and stuck it back on the wish wall. I kept a close watch on anyone lingering in front of the wall, but no one gave my note a second glance. However, in the time it took me to go out and get some water, I returned to the classroom to find new writing on the note. Above my altered text, "I want to be a knight," were two simple strokes added below, impossible to identify the writer. X. X granted. Whether I wrote princess or knight, he granted it. Yet he was never willing to let me know who he was. I turned around blankly. The classroom was full of people, all busy with their own affairs. My gaze shifted across the few suspects in the class. I most suspected X was a guy named Mason. He was gentle, silent, and introverted. He fit the image of X perfectly. I went up to talk to Mason. I had just lightly tapped his desk. Suddenly, a strong wind blew the curtains up. I followed the movement. Ethan's seat was by the window. Outside, the summer trees were lush, and the cicadas were chirping. The wind messed up the hair on his forehead. The students around him were noisy, but he alone was bright and distant, his pale fingers twirling a pen in boredom. Ethan inadvertently lifted his eyes, his gaze meeting mine perfectly. He clicked his tongue lightly, turning his head away with a hint of irritation. Baffling Ethan. The wish on the note came true once again. The things X agreed to always happened. This time, I became the knight who traveled over mountains and rivers to rescue the princess. When the play officially premiered, the audience was packed with all the teachers and students of the school. Looking out, it was a sea of dark blue and light gray youthful uniforms. Actually, my role had very few lines, but watching Ethan forced to play Snow White was amusing. If looks could kill, everyone present would have died once over. I watched him quietly, watching the him that was still alive and vivid. He was annoying at most. He didn't deserve to die. Finally, it was my turn. I drew my plastic sword, crossed mountains and ridges to find my sleeping princess, fought off the bandits blocking the way, and finally arrived in front of him. Ethan lay cold-faced among a pile of cheap, brightly colored fake flowers. I knelt on the ground and ad-libbed. Princess, Night Lily is late to protect you. I am here to save you. I saw Ethan's jawline tighten, and the corner of his eye twitched slightly. Next, according to the innovative script that the drama club president had changed beyond recognition, it was time for the knight to kiss the princess, and then the princess would slowly wake up. I just needed to fake this part. I only needed to lower my head symbolically. Ethan was truly born well. Playing Snow White wasn't discordant at all. His skin was fair, the bridge of his nose high. In his hand with its distinct knuckles, he held an apple red to the point of blackness. It was like a fairy tale book fluttering open, and the slumbering, unconscious figure leapt from the pages. Then, the sleeping princess in front of me threw away the apple, moved my microphone away, and opened his tightly closed lips aslit. Lily, please have some dignity. Your gaze is too naked. Princess Ethan's face clearly wrote one sentence. Don't have any improper thoughts about me. Just as I was about to retort, my head felt heavy and slammed down, crashing straight onto his lips. Ethan. The first princess in history to be smashed awake by a knight. My last thought before I passed out was, it's over. Ethan is going to find me an eyesore for another 3 years. Open wider. I heard this sentence as soon as I woke up and instinctively opened my mouth wide. As soon as I did, I heard 2 chuckles. The school nurse pointed at me and said, "Oh my, I didn't mean for you to open your mouth." The nurse was examining Ethan's mouth in front of him. Ethan still had the leisure to turn and glance at me sideways, his smile deep. Ethan didn't have any major issues, just that his lip had been cut a bit by my head. Applying some medicine would fix it. The nurse couldn't figure out why I had suddenly fainted. Only I vaguely suspected that perhaps the space-time was rejecting me. Someone suddenly entered the door. It was Mason. My eyes lit up immediately. Ethan looked at me lightly. I asked, "Mason, did you come to see me?" This introverted male classmate blushed and hurriedly denied it. "No, I'm getting pain relief cream from my desk mate." Ethan signaled him to come closer and said 2 words to him. Mason looked at me strangely, grabbed the cream, and ran off without looking back. Ethan and I were mostly done with our checkups and should have left long ago. Walking out of the nurse's office, I couldn't help asking him, "What did you say to Mason?" "I said if he didn't run faster, you were going to pester him to tutor you in math." He changed the subject, reaching up to touch his swollen lip, sighing, "Lily, your head is really hard." My heart felt both self-reproach and shame. "I don't have the ability to compensate you now. Wait 10 years, and I'll express my apologies then. By that time, I'll be an outstanding young entrepreneur. Very rich." Ethan was stunned. For once, he didn't mock my wild imagination. He asked, "Then have you gotten everything you wanted?" I thought for a moment and said, "Yes." Charlotte Morgan, 10 years later, didn't need X anymore. Her future was bright, and she possessed everything she wanted. I walked a long way forward before turning back to find Ethan still standing in the same spot, a smile in his eyes and on his brow. He said, "That's good." My main mission was still ongoing, but X was hiding too deeply. Judging by how Mason wished he could be 800 miles away from me, he definitely was an X. I decided to execute the other mission first. I had originally resolved to make Ethan regret his actions, but now I planned to change it. I wanted to make Ethan grateful to me. Ethan had to survive. He had to personally appear at the 10th year reunion. But I figured that with our current relationship, he would hardly listen to me, so I focused entirely on building a good relationship with him. I pestered him to tutor me in math, but the more we studied, the worse our relationship got. I didn't get discouraged. I insisted on sitting next to him on the school bus every day. Since schoolwork was getting heavier, Riverside High had free school buses to pick up and drop off students in the morning. Ethan and I both took it because we were equally poor. Ethan always sat in the last row. The seat next to him was always empty. Even if many students stood because there were no seats, they didn't dare sit next to him. I thought it was because the top scholar was unapproachable. Later, I learned there was another reason they ostracized Ethan. They were afraid of him. Ethan's father was a wife killer famous in Riverside, who had just been released from prison. This time, I insisted on occupying the seat next to him. Ethan turned his face to look out the window, listening to music with his headphones, distant. On the bus, he was exceptionally strange and indifferent. Watching the scenery outside circle around, he looked like he already knew his ending but had no choice but to follow the track. At times like this, he never spoke to me. I surprisingly didn't dare disturb him either. I didn't know if it was my illusion, but a year passed in the blink of an eye. Unknowingly, it was already 11th grade. It was like pale pages of a book being blown rapidly by the wind, so fast that no trace could be left. Finally, one day, I summoned the courage to ask him, "Ethan, what song are you listening to?" Ethan was quiet for a long time, so long that I thought he wouldn't answer. Only then did he turn his head, his voice very faint. "SAT listening practice." He took off one earbud and handed it to me. I calmly looked at his pale fingertips holding the earbud, and the long-lost fear of being dominated by standardized tests surged in my heart. Suddenly, I didn't really want to take it. Ethan didn't wait for my response and made a move to take it back. I hurriedly held it down, brushing past his fingertips to take the earbud. I let out a breath and put it on, but then I froze. A gentle male voice came from the earphone. The lyrics were singing about a scene where lilies were blooming in a certain place. He lied to me. What? SAT listening? This was clearly a song about flowers. I looked at Ethan. Unexpectedly, he was looking right at me, not guilty at all. Changing from his previous gloomy appearance, he curled his lips happily, looking like he had succeeded in a prank. Arrogant jerk. I didn't expect that when the song finished, it was the same song again. Only then did I realize that his old MP3 player had no SAT listening practice, no other songs. Only this one song about lilies. Ethan, on this bus driving in loops, listened to a single song on repeat, walking through a cycle of life and death. Finally, one day, someone asked him, "What song are you listening to?" I moved closer to him. When our shoulders touched, I could smell the pleasant scent of soap on him. I asked, "Is that place some very special place?" Ethan paused and said, "It's probably the place where lilies are the most beautiful." The school bus arrived at the stop, and everyone walked down. Ethan was no exception. He put away his earbuds, carrying that old MP3 player with only one song, and walked past me toward the front of the bus. I sat in my seat and called out to him just before he got off. "Hey, Ethan." He turned back, his jawline beautiful and distinct. I shouted, "Don't go to the river. Stay away from your dad. Listen to me, I'm right this time." Light and shadow shifted across his brow and eyes. He didn't speak. Unless someone from the outside broke it, no matter how many times he was wary, he would walk into the same ending. Ethan looked weary and lazy, the corners of his lips tilting up. He answered inexplicably, "It's already enough. You sitting beside me is already enough. You don't need to save me." As soon as this sentence ended, the scene in front of me was empty. The school bus and Ethan were both blown away by the wind like mist. Before me was still the heavy snow of the manor. I almost thought that what just happened was a long illusion. But when I looked down, I saw that the wish note on the lily branch had changed. "I want to be a knight." This was my request. X. This was his acceptance. In the next instant, the wish note and the plastic lily branch shattered together. The headphone cord in the time capsule also snapped, disappearing just as quickly as the wish note before it. I could barely stand, holding the iron box in my arms as I nearly fell into the snow. There wasn't much left in the box. If the time capsule could truly change the past, I had to be fully prepared to save Ethan from the impossible. But I had only taken a step when the wind and snow suddenly stopped. I had a strong premonition in my heart that once the storm stopped, the items in the box would lose their special power, becoming just like countless other ordinary, nostalgic objects. I fumbled for my phone. This private estate just had to be on a mountain. There was no signal at all. I lowered my eyes, pressing on the iron box in my hands, covered in snow. Around the time I graduated high school, my dad, for some unknown reason, suddenly discovered his conscience and sent me to a university out of state. Afterward, I was responsible for opening up overseas markets for him. My career and social connections flourished. Both X and Ethan existed only in my obscure, confusing past. As long as I didn't continue to dig, I was still the bright-futured Ms. Morgan, Miss Charlotte. As long as I didn't dig, I could pretend nothing had happened. But if I didn't dig, I would never know what happened to the person who called me Lily. I opened the iron box, like opening Pandora's box. Ethan died in the deep winter of the year we graduated. The homeroom teacher said he had injured his hand right before the college entrance exams and couldn't take them. Later, he didn't come back to process his registration for repeating the year. During that time, I was busy with matters regarding going abroad. Sometime later, on a winter night that year, he was pushed into the Riverside River by his father. By the time they pulled him out, he was already cold. At that time, I was struggling with my studies on the other side of the ocean, secretly vowing that one day I would make Ethan regret everything. Ethan was actually worse off than I was. After his father killed his wife and was thrown in prison, he was released due to good behavior just as Ethan started high school, and he casually reclaimed custody. I had run into his father demanding money from Ethan more than once. Anyone who got even slightly close to Ethan would be targeted by that terrifying man. So, Ethan hardly associated with anyone. He had always remained in my past. I kept moving forward, and sometimes I could barely recall what Ethan looked like. Suddenly returning to high school, I realized just how dazzling and vivid a person he was. The item that filled Ethan's box the most was handwritten notes. They almost stuffed it full. I remembered this quite well. Tuition in senior year was expensive, and the money my mother left me before she passed away wasn't quite enough. I had to skimp on food to save money, yet a bottle of milk and a sandwich would always appear in my locker. I was very poor and had nothing to give in return. So, I wrote small notes, folded them into various shapes, and placed them in the locker. Every time X left a bottle of milk, he would take away a small note. A strong wind suddenly kicked up around me, blowing the notes from the box all over the sky. I hurriedly reached out to catch them, but the freezing wind and snow forced me to close my eyes. When I opened them again, I was sitting in the senior year classroom under the glow of the setting sun. The duty roster on the blackboard said it was Friday, and school had been out for a long time. The classmates around me had all left. I felt inside my locker and, sure enough, found a carton of pure milk. It was plain packaging. This brand of milk had ceased production long ago. The Lily of the future would never drink such cheap milk again. I unwrapped the straw and took a fierce sip, finally getting the chance to take advantage of X again. I walked out slowly. The sun was sinking, and I kicked stones on the road with a bit of distress. It was already senior year, and I still hadn't found X. I had almost eliminated every boy and girl in the class. If I couldn't find him soon, I was going to have to suspect the balding homeroom teacher. There was a faint commotion at the school gate. I pushed through the crowd of onlookers and struggled to look inside through the gaps. Even though people were watching, they stood far away, as if afraid of being contaminated by something dirty, whispering to each other. That's Ethan and his murderer father. Ethan stood there, his back thin and bony. The man was furious. Where is your scholarship money? All that money. Where did you hide it? Ethan seemed unable to see the strange looks from so many people and gave a very slight, contemptuous smile. Didn't you take it all long ago? Impossible. You definitely still have money. I saw you buying milk. The man suddenly reached out and tore Ethan's backpack to the ground. Books tumbled out, accompanied by a fluttering shower of small paper notes. Ethan didn't move an inch, letting the man tear at him and wave his fists. But the moment he saw the small notes fall to the ground, the knuckles of his hands hanging by his sides suddenly turned white. I was more shocked than anyone. I looked at the empty milk carton in my hand, then at the notes on the ground. For a moment, I couldn't draw a conclusion. I reached out and smashed the finished milk carton onto the man, then stepped forward to pull Ethan behind me, shouting, "Damn it, does school security not care about crazy people?" Ethan's father looked furious, but when his gaze swept over Ethan behind me, he was suddenly intimidated and didn't dare approach another step. Security finally rushed over, pulling the disorderly man away and dispersing the crowd. The small notes rolled into the dust. Ethan's secret thoughts were laid out in such a humiliating way. I was still dazed. I crouched down and repacked the scattered notes into Ethan's bag, along with his fallen textbooks. I suddenly understood something. Ethan's time capsule didn't have the wrong name on it. It was his box. I looked up. I had originally wanted to ask if he was X, but I don't know which wire crossed in my brain, and I shouted once again, "Ethan, do you have a crush on me?" As soon as the words were out, I was ready to accept Ethan's humiliation. Last time he mocked my score of 38 in math. This time he would probably laugh at me for being delusional. Ethan stood in his school uniform, the light coming from his direction. He lowered his head and no longer hid it. "Yes. I have a crush on you, Lily." The backpack in my hand fell to the ground with a thud. Ethan crouched down, took his bag, and put the notes that had been trampled and deformed into it. Lowering his eyes, he said, "So, stop getting close to me." I asked dryly, "Why?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I don't want a high school romance." Narcissist. Ethan's eyelashes were very long, hiding the expression in his eyes. He said, "Lily, go to the future you deserve. Go be your happy and successful young entrepreneur. Your path is covered in flowers. Don't look back anymore." 17-year-old Ethan was sufficiently poor. 17-year-old Lily was also sufficiently poor. The poor Ethan, however, noticed Lily's plight and used money saved from who knows where to frequently leave milk in her locker. Poor Ethan and poor Lily should have both had wonderful futures. I looked at Ethan and said slowly, "Dear X, how do I walk into your future?" He said, "Lily, don't walk into my future. I don't have a future." From the moment I knew Ethan and X were the same person, from the moment I heard Ethan say with my own ears that he had a crush on me, he had been avoiding me, refusing to have any connection with me. Even the strawberry milk in my locker stopped appearing. Ethan would go on to miss the college entrance exams due to a hand injury, and then fall into the Riverside River in the winter of our graduation year. I felt that both of these events were inextricably linked to his father. Helping Ethan deal with his father was my most important mission right now. When I looked up at the calendar, I realized it was already May of 12th grade. The atmosphere around us was tense with exam preparation. I didn't have any study pressure. My dad's assistant would likely contact me soon to discuss college matters. But this period should be when I ran into trouble. My mom built the business from scratch with my dad. After he turned around, cheated, and angered my mom to death, I lived with my grandmother. Later, my grandmother passed away too, and I lived alone in her old house. Unexpectedly, a real estate developer wanted to buy the land. I refused to move, so the developer hired a bunch of thugs to guard my house and intimidate me. Since there was no physical harm, the police could only give verbal warnings at most. In the end, it was X who silently settled it for me. But this time I waited and waited. Let alone being harassed by thugs, I didn't even see a shadow of a thug near the house. One night in late May, a torrential spring rain fell. I woke up from a dream, my back soaked with sweat. I subconsciously typed a text to the police and sent it, then hurriedly pushed open the door. The humid scent of rain hit my face. I grabbed the umbrella by the door and walked into the rainy night. This was an old neighborhood with few residents left. I heard the sounds of a struggle around the corner and took a hurried look through the rain. Ethan was pinning a man's head against the wall. There were other thugs and hooligans around, but even fighting one against many, he wasn't losing ground. I recognized the man Ethan was pinning against the wall. It was his father. There were voices coming from the other side of the wall. Ethan's father said, "I asked around about that girl. Her dad is quite rich. You have a good eye, kid." Ethan slammed the man's head hard against the wall, lowering his voice. "What do you want?" Their movement stopped. I heard Ethan's father say, "Ethan, go fight underground boxing for me. I need a lot of money. If you don't give it to me, I'll go ask that girl for it." The rain fell. Ethan said, "Fine." The man said, "Don't take that college exam. If you fly away, I won't be able to control you anymore." Ethan said, "Fine." The man said, "I don't trust you. Hurt your hand for the next 2 months. I'm afraid you'll sneak off to take the exam and soar into the sky." Ethan said, "Fine." The man laughed. If your mom had been as obedient as you back then, she wouldn't have had to be beaten, would she? The police I had called earlier hadn't arrived yet, but I was already furious, wishing I could kill this group of people. So this was how Ethan was coerced into getting hurt, how he missed the exam. I couldn't hold back anymore. At worst, I'd get beaten up. I picked up a long metal pipe leaning in the alley. I didn't know which household had left it there, and charged out through the curtain of rain. I shouted, "Get the hell away." I swung the metal pipe with all my might, smacking several people. Cries of pain and angry curses rose up. They didn't understand where this crazy girl had come from. These people actually had knives on them, but the sound of police sirens was already ringing out in the distance. The steps they had prepared to take forward paused, and they fled in panic, no different from sewer rats scattering at the light. I tossed the metal pipe aside and wiped the rain from my face, only to find that Ethan had fallen to the ground and was struggling to use the wall to stand up. I knelt on the ground and reached out to support him. "Princess, Night Lily is late. I am here to save you." Princess Ethan's brow and eyes were cold. The spring rain ran down his jaw. He held my hand, his fingertips touching the bruise on his face, which had already swollen into a long strip. I was furious. "Who hit you this hard? It pisses me off." Ethan's gaze landed on the metal pipe I had just thrown away. "It was you," he said. "I suspect you are seeking revenge." Night Lily didn't bring a sword. Her metal pipe was an indiscriminate weapon. I touched his right wrist. The bone was distinct, and it was cold to the touch. Fortunately, they hadn't caused any permanent damage yet. Ethan's hand was valuable. This was the hand of a future top scholar. Ethan, however, pulled his hand out of mine and said softly, "Didn't I tell you not to worry about me?" I looked at him seriously. "Ethan, I came this time with only one purpose. Not to slap Ethan in the face. Not to find X. I'm just here to guide you to the path you should be on. The water of the Riverside River in deep winter is too cold. Don't be pushed down there again, Ethan. I have already outrun time and run to your past. So please, give me a chance to walk into your future." Adult control over minors is a dimensional strike. For general problems, one can seek help from teachers, but for someone like Ethan's dad, an unstable terrorist with a murder record, it might not be solved so easily. Who knows what he would do if he went crazy? Ethan's father had an immense desire to control him. Not just me, but anyone who got close to him would be targeted. When my dad's assistant came to the door, I proposed seeing my father, whom I hadn't seen in years. He agreed. My dad looked at me as if I were a stranger. Actually, he looked quite familiar to me. After he arranged for me to go to college out of state, I had been expanding overseas markets for him. Our contact really couldn't be considered sparse, but I had always only called him Mr. Morgan. I got straight to the point, very direct, trying to keep my posture steady. "Mr. Morgan, I don't plan to go to college. The shares my mother left me, which were kept secret and held in trust by you, I don't plan to claim them either. I won't trouble you at all in the future. I want to make a deal with you, using all of these things as bargaining chips." Mr. Morgan was a bit surprised. I said, "I will use everything to exchange for Ethan's safety. Make his crazy father stay away from him, disappear from his side. I didn't want the private estate, didn't want the luxury handbags, didn't want people respectfully calling me the outstanding young entrepreneur." Mr. Morgan laughed twice and said, "Do you know why I suddenly sent you abroad?" I shook my head sincerely. "Conscience discovered?" "Half a month ago, someone named Ethan came to see me. He said his murderer father had targeted my daughter. To avoid complications, he told me to send you away immediately. I thought about it. All these years, I have failed you. This Ethan is quite interesting. He even planned your college applications and future career path in 100 pages of paper. I asked him what he would do if I didn't agree. He smiled and said his life was cheap anyway. At worst, he'd perish together with his father. How could a 17-year-old say something so final? In the end, it really turned out to be a prophecy. I never knew that while he was stuck deep in the quagmire himself, he lifted me toward the sky, sending me toward a bright and vast future. My brain was buzzing, but I repeated subconsciously, "Mr. Morgan, are you still doing this deal?" He said, "Deal." The moment Mr. Morgan said that, I felt the shackles on my body lighten, as if some new possibility was unfolding. Mr. Morgan said, "He kept calling you Lily, Lily." I asked Ethan why he didn't use the surname Morgan. He said you didn't like it. That Lily was your mother's name. Charlotte Morgan. Although I have neglected you all these years, you must remember, you are always a Morgan. I suddenly trembled all over and asked, "What did he call me?" "Lily." But I remembered it wasn't like that. Whether it was X or Ethan, from 10th grade on, they had always called me Charlotte Morgan. It wasn't until near graduation that I revealed to X that I didn't like the surname Morgan, and asked him not to add Morgan to future birthday greetings, just to call me Lily. Lily. But this time, I used the items in the time capsule to return to this space-time, and from the first time we met, Ethan called me Lily. Without any intimacy. To him, it was just a simple name. I ran outside. People trapped in time experience a constantly looping past, repeating the alternation of life and death over and over. Different scenery swept past me. Countless memories surged toward me. This was a closed spacetime. Time only flowed between Ethan's 10th and 12th grades. From meeting Lily to Ethan falling into the river. It went back and forth like this. Ethan always had his memories. He had struggled, but no matter how the process changed, he would fall into that cold, dark river in that deep winter. Ethan said he had no future, and he really had no future. When he heard Lily's future was brilliant, he was truly happy. Only he was trapped in place, never moving forward. Even looping countless times, Ethan never gave up on one thing, being her unknown ex, sending her to a bright future. I didn't know how long I ran, crossing busy city streets, before finally stopping in the corridor behind the school bulletin board. Something had already been posted on the board. It looked like the love letter I had summoned the courage to write to X before graduation. Ethan came from the distance with his backpack over one shoulder. The moment he passed the bulletin board, he suddenly stopped. His fingertips pressed on the love letter. It was a gesture of taking it down. So, he actually never posted that love letter from the beginning. It was just that I happened to bump into that scene, making me angry for so many years. Ethan withdrew his hand, his fingertips resting on his chin to hide a smile, looking intently at the love letter posted on the board in front of him. The sunlight fell fragmentally on his brow and eyes. So, I really couldn't be blamed for misunderstanding him. Anyone seeing that would think this jerk had posted it triumphantly. I walked quickly toward Ethan, who was preparing to take down the letter again, but stopped abruptly after just 2 steps. I saw a girl with a ponytail appear, grabbing Ethan's left hand and shouting, "Ethan, you posted my love letter on the bulletin board. You jerk, I'm going to make you regret this." That was the true 17-year-old Charlotte Morgan, her brow filled with youthfulness. I recoiled violently, looking down at myself, seeing only nothingness. Ethan took the love letter down, smiling faintly. "If you can go to a university out of state, I'll be exasperated to death immediately." Lily stomped her foot and said, "I won't let you succeed. I won't go away. I'm going to follow you forever, make you buy me milk forever, annoy you to death, make you regret this for a lifetime." Ethan took a pen out of his pocket with his left hand. In the blank space at the bottom of the love letter, he casually sketched a few strokes. Then he turned around, looking at the 17-year-old Lily, yet seeming to look past her to meet my eyes. "Lily, I like you." The morning light refracted a new parallel space-time from the endless past, expelling the intruder who didn't belong. I had never been so fortunate, yet never so envious and jealous. My princess Ethan. Night Lily. The rescue was successful. I fell into the snow. My phone smashed out of my pocket, glowing with a weak light. December 21st, 2022, 0:10. It turned out only 10 minutes had passed, but I had distinctly relived 3 years. The paper pinched and my fingertips fluttered in the wind. I looked down and saw I was holding a love letter. The opening words on the paper. "Dear X, I like you. I hope you can tell me who you are." The blank space below had been marked by someone unknown. This time, the mark left was not just 2 simple strokes, but a careless, flamboyant signature. Ethan Carlson. Ethan received. Dummy Lily, I am Ethan. Haven't you guessed it's me yet? The slip of paper on the time capsule with Ethan's name was blown by the wind, revealing the two names on its reverse side, X and Lily. This was the time capsule belonging to X and Lily. But inside, it was already empty. The wish notes, small paper slips, and earbud cords had all vanished with the wind. Only this love letter, once torn to pieces and then taped back together, remained to prove that what just happened wasn't my dream. Which lyric was dredged up from the intertwined earbud cords of our youth? Why shed tears for beautiful things? I had already saved the Ethan in another space-time, breaking the balance of his loop. Being Ethan's knight during the 10th grade play, listening to music with Ethan on the school bus in 11th grade, gathering the trampled notes for Ethan in 12th grade, saving him from the siege in the torrential spring rain, and finally protecting him and his girl from harm. I created a warm parallel space-time for my ex, my dear Princess Ethan. This was already the most perfect ending in a fairy tale. I wanted to stand up, but fell into the snow once again. But in this lifetime, I had already missed Ethan. He was the annoying classmate in my memory. All his tenderness was hidden under the guise of X. He pushed me from a background Lily to a protagonist princess. He sat beside me on the school bus for 3 years, listening to a song about lilies alone. His small notes were once trampled without dignity, and he surrendered in the pouring spring rain. He went to find my cold-hearted father to seek a bright future for me. Because of his injury, he couldn't take the college entrance exam, and finally, in the deep winter night, he was buried in the river with the father he hated his whole life. I lost nothing. I was still that Ms. Morgan, Miss Charlotte, the young entrepreneur Charlotte Morgan praised at the reunion. But I had never been so envious of the Lily in another space-time. Poor her. Had poor Ethan to accompany her. I stood up, finally steadying my body. I quietly placed the love letter into the iron box. The label on the surface was written in a lazy scrawl. Ethan Carlson. Turning the slip over, the handwriting was noticeably much gentler. X and Lily. Lily was the secret Ethan kept. On the eve of my 27th birthday, I attended a high school reunion. The person I hated most and the person I was most grateful to were both absent. He was absent forever. He is Ethan. He is X. He is my dear distressed princess who never waited for his night lily.